Now, you and I are quite limited on time today because we have an intensive that is
Yeah, we
starting
do.
in 50 minutes. But we have a big announcement, and that is the Great Real Estate Reset Summit
Hmm.
is happening on November 5th and 6th. And next Wednesday, which is September 15th, we are having an incredible one-day promotion where we got several bonuses, which I'm going to get to in a second. But before we
Okay.
get to that, why don't you tell us a little bit about this great real estate reset summit that we're doing?
Well, the really, when we look at what's going on economically, globally, and certainly in Canada, when we look at housing in Canada, I mean, we realize just how big of an issue it's become, how big of a topic it's become. I mean, gosh, our politicians have been campaigning on it for weeks. It's in all of the headlines. And at the end of the day, JG, we know that housing in Canada is an important part of our economy. And so when we look at the summit and what we want to achieve in the summit, number one is economic updates, understanding where we are in the real estate cycle, but as well giving people an opportunity to learn what's going on, not only in a global macro picture, but right down into the provinces and the cities and what's happening in the world of real estate, so that we can see where there are investment opportunities for those people who are looking to even get into their first home, understanding what it could take, some lessons learned that would maybe open up a door of opportunity to buy that first home, even though you think, I can't do it. And so, having experts, having breakout sessions where we get into the minutia, the specifics, get questions answered, all of your real estate questions answered, whether you're an investor, a first-time home buyer, because to us, we talk about that a lot. It is an investment, and understanding what's going on, and that's what this summit is really going to open up the door to for people is what's happening economically, what does it mean to our housing market, and we're going to break it down in fine detail and get questions answered in the how-tos as well.
Beautiful. Well, listen, one of the things you mentioned there, and just to give our viewers a bit of context, is in Canada, the housing sector represents more than, just to give you a context compared to the US, our housing sector recommends is twice as much as what it is in the States. Our housing sector makes up a big part of GDP. So what happens to housing has a big effect on what happens to our economy in general, which is why the politicians are so intent on talking about it as part of this election, which, by the way, Patrick, the Great Real Estate Reset Summit is coming right after the new politicians sort of will be
Yeah,
elected. So we're going to
yeah,
find out. And that's going to play a role for real estate investors. It's going to play a role for real estate investors. It's going to play a role for homeowners. It's going to play a role for every person in Canada. So that's going to be one big topic of conversation. And the other big topic of conversation is really how there's some technology converging right now. And these convergences of technology are changing the real estate landscape forever. And it is time now for investors to prepare. We've actually been talking about this for 5 years, but we were actually quite early back then. We are
mm-hmm.
now in a place where things are converging and you're having several things come together, things like electrification, things like autonomous driving, things
Yeah,
like technology advancements that are
yeah.
finally starting to converge. And this is where our society will never be the same. And it will, I tell you, it will affect how people live, where people live, how people invest, and specifically for us here as Canadians, what do we do for the future of real estate? That's why we're calling it the Great Real Estate Reset Summit.
Well, because it is a reset that's happening right before our eyes. How people are choosing to live, decisions they're making in terms of the type of housing they want to buy, the type of properties they want to rent, even, JG. These are all having an impact. But it's interesting, back to your other point, which is really we need to shine a light on it. When we look at our gross domestic product, which is really what we have to pay attention to, housing makes up now over 10% of that GDP growth. Now, what's interesting about that is you break that housing market down. We look at construction, we look at renovations, we look at the administration that drives revenue in that GDP. Now, here's the thing. Lots of conversations right now around rising, the potential of raising rates. Well, will Bank of Canada do that? Won't they do that? We don't know. Nobody ever knows for sure, because guess what? Sometimes when we got inflation like we do, they're going to say, we're going to up those rates, bring that inflation down. Well, what's the spin-off effect of that? What's the consequences of that? Well, then you slow down the whole economy, given housing is what's a big part of what's driving it. So there's a lot of things to consider. And so when we break things down, like we will at the summit, it really opens up the door for people to view what's happening. And as we look at the real estate, the great real estate, Canadian real estate reset, these are all parts of things that we didn't really have to consider so much before. But these are major influencers, you know, the work from home, JG, to your point, technology, all of these things are affecting the decisions of people who are investing in real estate. Oh, and how about supply and demand? What does that mean? Oh gosh, that hasn't been the biggest issue ever. So this is what this summit is all about, breaking down those pieces, having really great interaction and discussion and looking at what it means economically, as well as great opportunities to network with like-minded people who understand and they see real estate as an important part of their economic and financial future.
Yeah, well, you said something interesting there, which is, the future of real estate is really, there's going to be, in my view and in our view, there is going to be an absolute tsunami of opportunities that are coming
Yeah.
at us, and it's time to position ourselves now. And I got to say, Patrick, that, no one really anticipated what COVID-19 and the coronavirus would do to the real estate market. I mean, we really didn't, but it quickly once we figured it out, which was actually really relatively early on, we started telling our members, we started telling the community how to position themselves. And one of the things we did say is we didn't know how, but we knew that it would shake up the market in such a way where opportunities would show up that had never been possible before. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happened, and that's exactly what's happening again, because this future of real estate, digitization, artificial intelligence, electrification, autonomous driving, these are massive convergences that are going to shake the market in a way where there will be winners and there will be losers, and you have got to be on the winning side of this. Otherwise, unfortunately, it won't be good for you.
Well, and you make a really great point. There will be winners, there will be losers. And the other side of that is that we're not painting the whole market with one brush. You know, of course, we hear the headlines and they're generally driven by, of course, Toronto, GTA, Vancouver, Lower Mainland. And while those are the bigger centers, and, you know, we hear a little bit more about Montreal, but real estate is regional, and the opportunities that exist in other centers, smaller suburban areas. I mean, we're looking at we'll use Peterborough as an example because you live there. You know, you
No,
compare that.
don't use Peterborough as an example, Patrick. I have way too much competition here. I mean, use something else.
The point is that when we look at these smaller centers, we're seeing the migration of, you know, what we referred to back then as the Great Canadian Migration, because what was happening, people are moving out of the real uh, densified areas like a downtown core. They need more space. They want, you know, they're fearful of future lockdowns, having to work from home, all of the things that affected what they want, which is number one, a lifestyle choice given what's happening with the pandemic and the future possible restrictions. But as well as that, it's affordability. I mean, living in a downtown core, I think Toronto condos, you know, hit $1 million. You know, if you could even get a single detached, it's 1.75, and Vancouver, all these numbers are very big. So what was happening? That migration, as we said, out into these suburban areas, and then certainly the smaller centers around the country, but they're not all the same. That's the bottom line. What's happening in Alberta is different than BC, then different than Southern Ontario.
And the REIN research team, for the first time ever in the last 5 months, has really expanded. We're doing East Coast, we're doing Quebec, we're
Yeah.
doing Central Canada, we're doing Saskatchewan, we're doing naturally Alberta, we're doing it all, coast to coast, shoreline to shoreline. The whole thing is being analyzed now on a constant basis because
Yeah.
things have opened up. I mean, the digitization of what's happening here has really opened things up. I want to end on this note here, Patrick, for me, which
Yep.
is, a lot of people listening to this right now, they're thinking, okay, guys, we see what's happening, but, are these things like autonomous driving, are they really going to take hold? I mean, it's such a small part of the market. They've only sold such a small number of electric cars. Is it really going to matter? I want to introduce people to a concept called market trauma, which is, it's been scientifically proven that a 2% change in a market like drive vehicles, a market like real estate, any 2% change in that market is going to have a tsunami effect and a ripple effect that will go on for decades. And that's really
Yeah.
what we're in the middle of right now.
Yeah.
COVID started that. We didn't know what would be the impetus. We didn't know what would be the catalyst Turns out it was COVID, and we are now off to the races. So it is truly a race against time for real estate investors. I mean, people can either close their eyes and not see any of this and wake up in 5 years and say, holy shit, the world is different, or they could join us at the great real estate reset summit that we're doing and really get ahead of the curve. Even though we've been talking about this for 5 years, we're really going to get people ahead of the curve. So on September
Things are speeding
15th,
up.
when the tickets go on sale, folks, you will have the opportunity to, number one, save $150 on your ticket. That's number one. And number two, you're going to get a 3-month subscription to REIN Channel. Now, if you haven't been to REIN Channel yet, you got to check it out, REINChannel.com. It's like the Netflix for real estate investors. Incredible content, incredible research, incredible shows, highly produced. And people are going to get a 3-month subscription to REIN Channel for free if they sign up on September 15th. It all goes live September 15th, Patrick.
Want to see everybody there. Of course, the non-renewable resource is time, and we're going to make sure that it is the best and most effective use of your time that you're going to get a huge return on in your investment of time. We're going to have some fun along the way, and we're going to make sure that you get what you need for your decisions that you're making when it comes to real estate and creating that financial future for yourself.
The first people to get access to these tickets are going to be people that are in our database. So go to REINCanada.com, subscribe, get on the list, and you're going to find out. Actually, an email was just sent out literally 2 minutes ago, and people are starting to get notified of this. It all happens on September 15th. We'll see you then, and we'll be doing more videos closer to that time. So, Patrick, thanks for doing this, and we'll see you at the best Canadian real estate reset event, this summit happening November 5th and 6th.
Thanks, JG.